Julia Belmont made a difficult decision to send her young son Richter to live with his aunt for safety. But before they could part ways, the vampire Olrox, bent on revenge, caught up with them. Brave and unyielding, Julia confronted him, ordering Richter to run while she fought to protect him. Her skill made her a formidable foe, forcing Olrox to transform into a monstrous serpent. The battle turned when little Richter, unable to stand idly by, attacked the vampire himself. Distracted by her son's reckless courage, Julia rushed to shield him, leaving her vulnerable. Seizing the moment, Olrox struck, impaling her. Richter could only watch in horror as his mother's life slipped away. He came over to the boy and told him Julia had killed someone dear to him, and now he had taken her life in return. Olrox promised Richter that he would kill him as well before vanishing into the night. 9 years later, the shadow of the French Revolution loomed. In the woodlands of the Vendée, Maria Renard, a fiery revolutionary, held a secret meeting. Among the attendees was Richter, now a young man shaped by his grief. The gathering was interrupted by a sudden vampire attack, but Richter and Maria fought them off. As Richter struck down the last vampire, it spoke of the vampire messiah's impending arrival. Richter and Maria pieced together clues, deducing that a congregation of vampires was gathering at the Marquis Chateau to prepare for their messiah. They sought guidance from the local abbot, but found no help. Undeterred, they returned to Maria's mother's home. Their peace was short-lived. Night creatures descended upon them, but just as the battle turned dire, Annette and Edouard arrived, driving the creatures away and saving Richter and Maria. Meanwhile, at a port, Olrox disembarked from a ship. He was welcomed by Vaublanc, another vampire with ties to the vampire messiah. Drolta Tsuendes arrives in Paris, unleashing chaos and bloodshed as her murderous rampage leaves the city in terror. Annette reveals that Elisabeth Bathory, the infamous Blood Countess, is the vampire messiah they've been hunting. This revelation leaves Maria's mother, Tara, visibly shaken, her past coming back to haunt her. Tara reveals that she once lived in Russia, where Elisabeth abducted her sister, and Tara, in a desperate bid to save her, discovered that it was already too late. Elisabeth had turned her sister into a vampire. Tara recounts the horrific torture Elisabeth inflicted on her victims, painting a picture of cruelty beyond imagination. Forced to abandon her sister to save herself, Tara fled Russia, carrying the scars of that harrowing experience. Now Richter, Maria, Annette, and Edouard make their way to the chateau, determined to confirm their suspicions about the vampire gathering. They hide in the shadows, observing the eerie proceedings, but their stealth is broken when Annette spots Comte de Vaublanc. Overcome by rage, she acts impulsively, drawing attention to their group. The vampires immediately pursue them, and the group is forced to flee for their lives. In the chaos, Edouard is captured by the vampires, leaving the others no choice but to leave without him. Annette is devastated, consumed by grief as she mourns her best friend, knowing he has been killed by the enemy. The fallen Edouard and other victims are taken to the abbot's abbey. The abbot, using this machine, turns Edouard into a night creature, his humanity erased. Watching from the shadows, Olrox observes the horrifying event. Annette is consumed by grief over Edouard's fate, blaming herself for not doing more to save him from the vampires. Memories of her painful past flood her mind, and we glimpse young Annette's life with her mother, Esther, a witch enslaved by vampires. Their bond was strong, but their situation was perilous because of Esther being a witch. When Vaublanc discovered the truth about Esther, he mercilessly murdered her, leaving Annette an orphan and shattering her world. The vampires then tried to brand Annette, marking her as property, but her latent magic surged unexpectedly, allowing her to escape. She fled blindly, hiding in a theater where an opera singer, Edouard, was performing. Edouard, moved by the terrified young girl, helped her escape the vampires. From that moment, he became her protector and closest companion, their bond growing stronger as they traveled together. Annette's journey took a turn when a priestess took her in and began training her in magic. Under the priestess's guidance, Annette honed her abilities and her resolve. But one fateful day, the priestess had a vision, one so horrifying it left her shaken. She told Annette that the Messiah must be stopped, for the fate of the world depended on it. With determination burning in her heart, Annette decided to journey to France, bringing Edouard along to face the looming darkness. In the present, Annette and her allies find themselves battling an outbreak of night creatures. They fight fiercely, managing to put an end to many of them, but then Annette sees something that stops her cold. Edouard, now transformed into a night creature, the sight of her dearest friend twisted into a monstrous form fills her with despair when one of the night creatures lunges at Annette, aiming to kill her. But to her shock, Edouard intervenes, killing the creature. Despite his transformation, something of the old Edouard lingers within him, a spark of their friendship. The abbot visits Edouard. He tells Edouard that his existence has a purpose, one he was created to fulfill. Meanwhile, Maria begins to suspect the abbot has aligned himself with the vampires. Conflicted and seeking answers, Annette proposes storming the abbey, taking down the Forge Master and rescuing Edouard. However, Richter vehemently opposes the plan, calling it reckless. Terra intervenes, revealing the existence of a hidden underground passageway that leads to the abbey, a safer alternative to a frontal assault. The group agrees to use the passage, though tensions remain high. Now, the abbot meets with Drolta, discussing about the night creatures. Edward's singing voice echoes through the halls, his sorrowful song unnervingly beautiful. Meanwhile, Olrox lurks in the shadows, spying on the abbot, his intentions unclear. The group makes their way through the hidden passage, but as they near the abbey, they're ambushed by night creatures. A fierce battle ensues with Maria, Annette, and Terra fighting valiantly. On the way, they engage with the rest of the enemies just as Drolta gains the upper hand and is about to kill Maria. The abbot intervenes, halting her attack. His motives remain murky. Annette finds Edouard. Desperate to ease his suffering, she asks if he wants her to end it for him. Fearful and confused, Edouard recoils, backing into a corner, his fragmented mind torn between his monstrous instincts and lingering humanity. Richter faces the vampire Marquis. Managing to kill him, he feels a fleeting moment of triumph until Olrox appears. The sight of the powerful vampire terrifies Richter, who makes the split-second decision to flee, warning the others to run as well. Annette is furious when she realizes Richter has abandoned them, calling him a coward for leaving them to fend for themselves. The sight of Olrox brought Richter's childhood trauma roaring back to life. Memories of his mother's brutal murder at the hands of the vampire haunted him, shaking him to his core. After escaping, he nursed his emotions in solitude, struggling to reconcile his fear and shame. Meanwhile, Annette tended to Maria's wounds, her mind consumed with a singular purpose: rescuing Edouard. However, Maria and Terra firmly held her back, urging her to think rationally. Annette, seething with frustration, voiced her anger and disappointment at Richter's decision to run, feeling abandoned in their time of need. Nevertheless, she assured Maria and Terra that she wasn't planning an outright assault, but merely intended to spy on the vampires. The abbot arrived, paying an unexpected visit to Terra and Maria. He attempted to justify his actions, his words carefully chosen. Before leaving, he dropped a bombshell. Maria was his daughter. Annette, fueled by her righteous fury, saw Vaublanc. The sight of him unleashed the storm within her, and she attacked with everything she had. Their battle was fierce and relentless. Using her magic, she trapped the vampire in a cross-shaped cage, leaving him immobilized. As dawn approached, Annette stood firm, watching as the first rays of sunlight burned through the vampire's flesh. She said that light would always conquer darkness, watching as Vaublanc met his end in the radiant glow of the morning. Elsewhere, Richter found himself at a bar, attempting to scrape together enough coin for a meal. An old man, noticing his plight, paid for his food. Richter expressed his gratitude, but their quiet moment was interrupted when a vampire arrived, hunting the old man. He took care of the threat. After, the old man revealed himself to be none other than Juste Belmont, Richter's grandfather. Erzsébet Bathory, the so-called Messiah, finally makes her grand entrance. When Erzsébet arrives, the gathered vampires and night creatures bow before her, treating her like a god. She declares to her followers that their days of fearing the sun are over and that she will soon obliterate it, plunging the world into eternal darkness. Meanwhile, Richter is with his grandfather, Juste Belmont. As they bond, Juste shares his tragic past, recounting how a vampire murdered his wife and best friend. He reveals his burden as the most powerful sorcerer in the Belmont lineage, a legacy he bore at great personal cost. Annette seeks guidance from Cécile and her ancestors. Cécile reminds her that the voices of her ancestors carry wisdom and power, urging her to heed their messages. While Richter and Juste share a moment of reflection, they are caught off guard by a sudden vampire ambush. The vampires overwhelm them, binding Juste and holding Richter hostage. The situation seems dire, but as Richter thinks of the people he loves, Maria, Tara, and Annette, something inside him awakens. Flames surge around him as he summons his magical abilities, incinerating the vampires in a blazing inferno. Erzsébet Bathory hosts a feast for the vampires. Amidst the dark celebration, Drolta informs Erzsébet of an intriguing revelation. The abbot has a daughter. This news sets sinister plans into motion. Maria confronts her mother, Tara, demanding to know why the truth about her father was kept hidden. Tara explains that she concealed it to protect her from the stigma of being labeled an illegitimate child. Later, vampires ambush Tara in the woods. Maria leaps into action, skillfully fighting alongside her mother. However, Maria is nearly caught off guard by a vampire lunging at her from behind, only to be saved by Richter. Richter reveals to Tara that he has reconnected with his grandfather, and Tara confesses her regret for hiding the truth about his family. Later, Richter seeks out Annette, apologizing for abandoning her and the others during the previous battle. With the air cleared between them, Annette acknowledges the gravity of the situation and agrees that they need a solid plan before making their next move. Meanwhile, Erzsébet pays a chilling visit to the abbot, commanding him to prove his loyalty by sacrificing his daughter, Maria, to solidify her rule. As the group gathers to strategize, Olrox appears suddenly, delivering a mysterious book to Richter. He mentions a machine and vanishes before Richter can retaliate. Fueled by anger and confusion, Richter is left with more questions than answers. Unbeknownst to her, Maria visits her father at the church, attempting to warn him about the impending attack. However, the abbot, torn but bound by Erzsébet's influence, resolves to carry out the sacrificial act. Tara and the others learn from Mizrak that the abbot intends to sacrifice Maria to Erzsébet. They waste no time and set out to save her, their determination unshaken even as the situation grows more dire. Erzsébet enacts her ultimate plan, devouring the sun itself, plunging the world into eternal darkness. With the absence of daylight, the vampires ascend into the sky, their power now seemingly unchallenged. The race to stop Erzsébet and save Maria becomes even more desperate as the stakes becomes higher. In the eternal darkness, Erzsébet Bathory transforms into Sekhmet, the Egyptian deity of war, radiating power and wrath. Within the church, the abbot prepares to sacrifice Maria, but just as he raises the blade, Richter, Tera, Annette, and Mizrach burst in, stopping the ritual. The abbot summons his night creatures to fend off the intruders. While Richter and Mizrach fight off the abominations, Tera begins chanting from the ancient book Olrox delivered, attempting to banish the infernal machine. Annette descends into the church's dark, oppressive basement, aiming to destroy the machine directly. On her way, she faces a night creature, only to be saved by Jacques, another night creature who seemingly retains fragments of humanity. Annette saw Edouard through his hauntingly beautiful singing. He has awakened memories of humanity in several night creatures. Annette tells him to leave with her, but he refuses, believing his purpose lies in helping the creatures trapped in there. Above, Tera kept chanting, and Annette uses her magic to push the machine into the depths of hell. However, just as victory feels within reach, Erzsébet herself arrives. In her divine form, she shrugs off their strongest attacks, utterly impervious to harm. Radiating godlike power, she does not intend to kill Maria, but to transform her into a vampire. The abbot, shocked, speechless at this revelation. Tera, sensing the desperation of the moment, offers herself in Maria's place. Erzsébet doubts the abbot's love for Tera, but Tera proves it. She agrees, taking Tera instead. As the group flees the church, Drolta and other vampires chase after them. Cornered, Richter prepares to fight, despite their overwhelming numbers. Just as Drolta moves in for the kill, Alucard, Dracula's legendary son, emerges from the shadows, driving a blade through her back. She collapses, and the remaining vampires scatter in terror, knowing they stand no chance against Alucard.